Hello there, friends, and welcome to the Paranatural Podcast. My name is Ben.
I'm Jake.
And we're so glad to have you joining us tonight. We got a real fun little story for you tonight. But first, Jake, how you been?
Getting over being sick, but other than that, good. How about you?
Yeah, we're doing all right. Yeah, the episode's a little late dropping this week because Jake was a little under the weather. And if you hear him sniffling and sneezing and blowing his nose in the background, just kind of try and forgive the poor fella. He is recovering and he's mustered up the courage and the fortitude to join us here today. So hopefully we can have a little bit of fun with it.
I'm a certified badass.
Certified badass. Now, the other thing we need to talk about is, holy shit, Jacob, we got a bunch of people in our Facebook group now.
That's right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we got quite a few of them in there now. So if you guys like the show, get in there. That's probably going to be the easiest and fastest way to tell us what you think of the show or the stories, or share your own stories or a joke or two, whatever you want to do in there. Just as long as everybody's getting along, we're good with it. So at the end of the show, Jake, if you're up for it, you want to shout all these people out, then we don't have to do Facebook shout outs anymore.
Oh, I love my people.
All right. So if you're in the Facebook group, just wait till the end of the show. You're going to get yourself a shout out. So are we ready to talk about some weird shit?
Always ready to talk about weird shit.
Right on. So without further ado, the tale of Gef the Talking Mongoose. So our story begins on September 13th, 1931, in a little farmhouse called Dorlish Cashin on the Isle of Man. And in this little farmhouse lived a little family, the Irving family, which consisted of Jim, Margaret, and their 12-year-old daughter, Vori. Now, Vori was a name I was not familiar with until hearing this story, and I wasn't exactly sure how to say it. It's spelled Voirrey. Now, Jacob knew how to say it the first time he saw it, but I was confused as shit. So I went to Google, and it gave me a number of pronunciations that were Voirrey, Voirrey, and my personal favorite, Vara. But Reddit informs me that it is, in fact, Vori, so that's what we're going to go with. It is also of note that there were two other children in the family, Elsie and Gilbert, which, wow, what a name that is. I'm glad that name is dying out. But those two were grown and gone before Jim even bought the little farm on the island of Man, or on the Isle of Man. So they really don't factor in. Now, what happened on September 13th in the year 1931 in this farmhouse of Dorlish Cashin was the family began to hear a scratching and a rustling noise inside the walls, which, if you live on a farm, is not an abnormal thing. Rodents love farms, and rodents get in walls. So thinking it was a rodent, a rat, or a stoat or something like that, Jim set out traps and he set out poisons. But all that succeeded in doing was losing Jim all of his bait. The bait from the traps would come up missing and the traps would catch nothing. Now, I'm not entirely sure how long this went on, but eventually Jim got real frustrated with this situation. So he walked over to the wall, and in a last-ditch effort, he imitated a dog and growled at the wall. At which point, the wall growled back at Jim. Now, Jake, I don't know about you, but I don't know how I would react to the wall growling back at me.
I'll probably try a bark.
Yeah, that might work. Well, not in this situation, it doesn't.
No.
Because after the thing growled back, and I'm sure, maybe Jim was a little taken aback at this, what he did was began to make other animal sounds. And the thing in the wall would mimic the sounds. Now, not only did it learn to mimic the sounds, but eventually it got to the point where if you just said the name of an animal, it would make the noise of the animal. So they would say, do a bird, and it would tweet like a bird. Or they would say, do a cow, and it would moo like a freaking cow. Now, it was around this time that they actually caught sight of whatever this thing was. They still didn't know. They hadn't seen it while they're getting it to mimic animals. But on October the 20th, they actually caught sight of it out the window. This would Jim and Vori did. They described it as possessing a small rat-like body with a long, bushy tail. Body and tail being of a yellowish hue, and the tail speckled with brown. This was the only, sort of the only direct sighting by anybody but Vori. So that's what we get out of it. And later on in her life, Vori said that she estimated that the thing was between 9 inches and a foot long. Now, by December of 1931, the thing in the wall began to make baby sounds. So it would cry and it would burble and goo goo and gaga and all the things babies do when they're first starting to find their voice, learn to talk. So the Irvings, mostly Vori, began reciting nursery rhymes to it. And very soon it began to repeat the rhymes back in a high, squeaky voice, but in clear, concise English. So now you got a thing in the wall, not only growling at you, but talking. And that's creepy. But apparently not so creepy to the family, because what they did was they started calling whatever was in the wall Jack. Kind of started treating it like a family pet. And eventually it stopped just repeating the nursery rhymes in clear and concise English, but began to speak all of its own. And one day, while after an incident involving some kids in a field and whatever that doesn't really factor into the story, Jim was at home telling his wife, Margaret, about what had happened with the kids. And out of nowhere, the thing in the wall spoke up and said that it didn't want to be called Jack anymore. Its name was Jeff.
My name's Jeff.
And it spelled Jeff for the family, Gef, and it was very adamant that that was how it was going to be spelled. So they respected his wishes and began to call him Jeff. And he also told them, because at this time they still referred to him as a rodent or a rat or something like that, but he informed the family that he was not a rat. He was an extra, extra clever mongoose. Now, an interesting point to this is that 20 years prior to this story, a neighbor of the Irvings had brought a bunch of mongooses. What are we settling on here? What the fuck is
Mongai. Sounds good.
Mongai. We'll settle on Mongai. But he had brought a bunch of mongai to his own farm in order to help control the rabbit population. So that's just an interesting side story. However, Jeff claimed he was not one of these. Jeff gave his origin story to the family, telling them that he was born in Delhi in the year 1852. Jacob, how old was Jeff at this point?
1852 to 1931.
Yes.
79 years old.
79 years old at this point. Now, he claims to be a mongoose. Do you know what the average lifespan of a mongoose is?
My guess was 4 to 8 years.
You're very, very close. It's 4 to 10 years in the wild and 20 years in captivity. So Gef was he was old for a person, but he's real fucking old for a mongoose.
Yeah.
He's extra special little mongoose indeed. Gef went on to tell the Irvings that he lived with a tall man who wore a green turban on his head. That's who he lived with originally. Then he lived with in Jeff's words, a hunchback. At some point, he doesn't exactly explain how, or at least it wasn't recorded where I could find it, that he wound up in Egypt and took up with a man named Holland. And it was Holland who brought him to England. Gef tells a story, and he also credits the Irvings with teaching him to speak. He said, quote, "For years, I understood all that people said, but I could not speak until you taught me." Now, it's kind of interesting that he had a method of backing up this claim and his story of having traveled quite a bit in his life, because he could speak bits of Russian, Spanish, Welsh, and Flemish. So up to this point in the story, what we have is a multilingual talking, quote unquote, mongoose that lives in the walls of this house. That sounds kind of fun, right?
Gotta be.
I mean, it sounds fun to me. Except Gef was, well, as I titled this part of my notes, kind of a dick.
What a dick. You dick.
You dick. So once Gef learned to talk, he really liked to talk. And often he would just rant and rave and make noises and scream and yell, "Vanished." At which point he would disappear for a couple of days. Now, we'll get into that a little bit more later, where he went, quote unquote, when he vanished. But not only would he scream and rant, he liked to cuss and swear. And he had a very high opinion of himself. And he would say things like, "I'll split the atom," which is kind of interesting. In 1931, we had not yet split the atom. And I'm not sure how well known our efforts to find a way to split the atom were at the time. And I should have researched that, but I didn't have time to. I'm very curious to know now. If anybody knows where the public's opinion or public knowledge of us splitting the atom was in 1931, let me know. But Gef would also say things like, "I am the fifth dimension. I am the eighth wonder of the world." Now, that's a pretty bold claim, except for the fact that, well, I mean, here it is, 2022, and we are still wondering what the hell was going on with Gef. So he might have been the eighth wonder of the world. I doubt he was I doubt he was the fifth dimension, though. Some other things that Gef would do is he would sing along with the gramophone, which is like an old school record player or something. But he wouldn't just sing along with his favorite songs. He would add naughty lyrics and twists. So, just he was a potty mouth little fucker. Now, on top of claiming to be an extra clever little mongoose, he would also claim to be other things. Quote, "I am an earthbound spirit," he claimed at one point. At another, he claimed, "I am a ghost in the form of a weasel, and I shall haunt you with weird noises and clanking chains." So I'm pretty sure at reading over this again that Gef was trying to compensate for something.
Gotta reiterate the dick thing.
Maybe he was Gef was kind of a dick. Just,
"You dick."
now there was another point at which Gef claimed to be something even different than that. So in 1932, Jim was looking out the window and he saw what he described was an exceptionally large cat. So what he did was he called Vori over, and he did the, do you see that too? And she agreed, yes, she saw it. And she described it as having a bulldog-like head, which that sounds like one ugly effing cat. And Jim said that it was also much larger than a regular cat and real funny looking. So he decided that it was not an ordinary cat. So he wanted to get a closer look at it. But wisely, he took his gun with him when he went. He didn't intend to shoot it, but he took his gun with him. And he said, in fact, that he did get well within range to actually shoot this damn thing. And he followed it as it went through a gateway and disappeared. Jim said there was nowhere for this thing to have gone. It just disappeared. Well, later on that day, he's telling Maggie about it. When Gef called out, "It was me you saw, Jim." So now apparently Gef is also a shapeshifter, as well as an extra clever mongoose, an earthbound spirit, and a ghost in the form of a weasel who's going to haunt you with weird noises.
And chains.
And chains. And chains. Don't forget clanking chains. Now, on top of this sizable ego, he could just be a dick. Like, just an absolute, terrible, horrible dick. So one of the dick things he would do was that if you were trying to whisper anywhere near Gef, you couldn't do it. You could not keep secrets from Gef. Jim wrote in a letter that he could hear you clear as day, 15 to 20 feet away, no matter how quietly you whispered. But not only could he hear you, but he would also just start screaming out everything you were saying. So there were no secrets when Gef was around. And if that wasn't enough of a dick move, Gef was also known to throw rocks. He would throw rocks at Jim when Jim was out working in the field or tending to the sheep. And he would throw rocks at Margaret as she walked down the road, going to or coming from town. On top of that, he bit Margaret on more than one occasion. Like, actually just damn bit her.
You dick!
I feel like we're hitting that button a lot today.
He deserves it.
Gef is an asshole.
Yeah.
He is just an asshole. Now, if throwing rocks, telling your secrets, and, biting people is not quite enough, he would also literally add insult to the injury anytime he was displeased. One example of this is when Jim went out to get the paper one day, and he brought it back in the house, and he sat down, and he began to open it. And apparently he was not doing so fast enough to suit Gef. Because out from the wall, Gef screamed, "Read it out, you fat-headed gnome." Now, I'm pretty sure fat-headed gnome is going in my repertoire of insults. Because that's just too goddamn funny.
As long as you don't call me a fat-headed gnome.
Jake, you fat-headed gnome. You don't got a fat head, though. You're like a regular-headed gnome.
It's an average head.
Can gnomes be 6'4"?
If they try really hard.
Maybe if you stack 3 gnomes on top of each other and put them in a trench coat.
Still look creepy.
You're 3 gnomes in a trench coat, aren't you?
Just need a trench coat.
Just need a trench coat. Now, if all of that wasn't bad enough, he also at one point threatened the family directly. Well, not directly, I guess, but kind of a veiled threat to the family, saying, quote, "I am not evil. I could be if I wanted. You don't know what damage or harm I could do if I were roused. I could kill you all, but I won't."
Not today, Satan. Not today.
Yeah, fuck you, Jeff, you little dick. Now that would actually be really creepy, except for the fact that Jeff's got like a high squeaky voice, so it'd be like getting threatened by Mickey Mouse. And that's, I mean, it's kind of scary, but it's not really that scary.
Right.
Now, it does actually get worse. Not only did Jeff throw things at people and cuss at them and spit at them and bite them and insult them and threaten them, but Jeff was obsessed with Vori. So originally, they decided to build him a little like home up in the rafters of Vori's room, and they called it Jeff's Sanctuary. Vori was the only one allowed to see him directly and for extended periods of time. Everyone else in the family could only ever catch like glimpses of Jeff as he passed through, up to and including Margaret when he bit her. So that is one fast ass little mongoose. He can run up, bite you, and leave before you even see him. He spoke to the whole family, but mostly he spoke to Vori. And at night, sometimes he would be in his sanctuary and he would be doing his ranting and raving thing, and it frightened her. And she was kind of afraid to be alone in the dark with Jeff causing a ruckus like that. So she asked her parents if she could sleep in their room. This apparently made Jeff irate. And he immediately began spitting and cussing and throwing a fit. And at some point during this, he said to the Irvings, "I will follow her wherever you put her." So that night, Vori went in to sleep with her parents. And in order to keep Jeff out, Jim barricaded the door with the furniture in the bedroom. Like he pushed the dresser and the wardrobe and whatever else up against the fucking door. But soon they heard something banging against the door. And then something began to try to push the door open. Jim said, quote, "Soon we saw the top of the door bulging in as though some terrific force were thrusting against it." Now, I want you guys to remember, this is a 9-inch to 1 foot long rodent of some sort. So what do you think, Jake? Maybe he weighs 5-6 pounds tops.
If that.
Like tops. He's like ferret sized, right?
Yeah.
And they're like what, 3-4 pounds?
Yeah.
How is a like 3 to say 6 pound critter gonna bulge the door in?
Especially back then, they had some heavy wooden doors.
Right. And this is like, I didn't describe this, but the house itself is fairly old. It's a stone house. So, you know, they didn't like skimp on no door in the stone ass house. That's like solid wood, I'm sure. So this like 8 or 9 pound, well, I mean, that's even over exaggerating, but little 5 or 6 pound critter is bulging in the fucking door, trying to get to Vori. Luckily, the door held. But once realizing that the door was going to hold, Jeff screamed out, "I'm coming in." And immediately a jar of ointment flew across the room and shattered. I'm pretty sure even a talking mongoose shouldn't be able to telekinetically move a jar of ointment when he's pissed. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah.
No, I'm convinced that's not a thing that should be happening. So now on top of talking little rodent, we have some poltergeist activity. So that's why I love this story. It kind of goes wild all over the place. Now, that was not the only telekinetic incident. In his little fits, Jeff also threw packing case needles. We talked about stones, which he threw more stones, and they saw the stones come up and fly and he didn't touch him. And he was also known to throw and move heavy furniture around the house.
No.
Yeah.
You dick.
Yeah. He's just chucking furniture and shit. Like, bro, put the fucking couch down. Now, this one's not so much a you dick Jeff move, but it is a telekinetic incident. Apparently, he had a ball. And what Jeff liked to do was before bed, he would sing and bounce the ball up and down the stairs without ever touching it with his apparently human hands. He had little human hands. We'll get there.
Creepy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know what the fuck Jeff was doing there. I'm pretty sure, though, even an extra clever little mongoose shouldn't have telekinetic powers. Now, all of this was pretty much the beginning of Jeff showing up. And eventually things did kind of settle down. And as far as I know, Jeff stopped like screaming out that he was going to maybe kill you. And he stopped throwing rocks and he stopped biting Margaret. And he actually kind of turned around and sort of became helpful-ish. And the things he would do is like, he would run around the house and kind of help pick up after people. If they forgot and left something laying on the table, he'd put it away for them or what have you. He would turn off lights. They had a wood stove, and if they like left it open and, you know, where it was going to be dangerous and they left or went to bed, he would shut it down for them. And he would also kill rabbits and leave them for the family to eat. Now, when he would kill these rabbits, you know, you would expect him to like bite them. You know, I'm pretty sure like a real mongoose, when they kill a rabbit, they bite it. No, he strangled them with his tiny little human hands. These rabbits were strangled to death and then left for the family to eat, which that sounds creepy and weird, but the family was not well to do. Jim had retired from his job as a merchant or salesman or something like that. And he had bought this little farm kind of as a retirement thing. And I'm assuming, given the age gaps between Vori and her siblings, the Vori was kind of maybe an unexpected late child. So an extra expense they weren't meaning to have, you know, et cetera, et cetera. These things happen all the time. But the farm was not doing great. And Jim did have a little trouble financing and feeding his family. So the rabbits were actually a welcome, like, extra bit of food. The other thing he did that wasn't exactly being a dick to the family, it was being a dick in general, but not exactly to the family, was that after he would rant and rave and he would scream vanished, he claimed that where he went to was into town. And he would do this by hanging off the backs of cars or riding on the axles of buses and things. And when he would come home, he would share gossip. So he would come home and tell the Irvings about all the stuff that was going around in town. Funny part about that is that he never imparted any information that wasn't something they had talked about while Jeff was quote unquote gone. So now the Irvings were not the only ones who experienced Jeff. And in fact, it was one of their neighbors who originally broke the story of Jeff and contacted a man by the name of Harry Price, who I'm sure if we do this long enough, we will talk about in more depth later. He was a very famous paranormal investigator at the time. And he was known for debunking like spiritualists and other phenomenon. Price asked a colleague of his, Captain James Dennis, to investigate the Irving home. Captain Dennis visited 3 times between 1932 and 1935 and was convinced that Jeff was 100% real. Now, Dennis never saw him, but he heard him and saw the effects of what Jeff could do. In a 1935 report that he wrote to Price, he stated, quote, "The voice then started in earnest, and the noise in the house was amazing. Shrill screams accompanied by terrific knocking, Loud bangs emanated from all parts of the house, as if the perpetrator moved with lightning speed. The noise continued for about 15 minutes, culminating with tremendous bangs, as if something had been thrown with great violence upstairs. And on top of describing this incident, he also claimed to have witnessed a bottle and some dishes fly from the top of the stairs, while hearing what he said was a derisive laugh. So apparently Jeff was throwing shit and thought it was funny as hell. Now, at some point during all of this, Jim sent out hair samples and track casts that he made and said belonged to Jeff. The hair was looked at and was actually determined to be from a dog, which the Irvings had a sheepdog named Mona, who didn't talk, so is not part of the story until now. And we figured that that's probably where the hairs came from. The footprints and the casts were sent to a zoological society, and the people there were very skeptical of what was going on. They said that no animal that they knew of had such disparities between front feet and back feet. And that is because apparently, Jeff, these casts showed animal rear feet and the aforementioned human-like front hands. And the Zoological Society said, yo, look, we've never seen such a thing before. And they were pretty sure they weren't real. They also noted that the casts did not show any skin textures, which you can see in casts that are left by real animals. Now, Price himself visited in 1935. And of course, just like Michigan J. Frog, Jeff did not show himself at this point. When Jim asked Jeff where he had been while Price was visiting, Jeff told him that he had been on holiday. So apparently Jeff just took a real fortuitous vacation. However, he had previously expressed a dislike and possibly even a fear of Harry Price coming to visit, and called him, quote, the man who puts the kibosh on spirits. Now, eventually, Jeff did begin to appear less and less around the family. He appeared for the last time sometime in the late 1930s. Jim died a few years later, and in 1945, Margaret and Vorey sold Dorlish Caston, and Jeff did not follow. In 1947, the farm's new owner, a man by the name of Leslie Graham, said he caught Jeff and clubbed him with a stick. However, he said he never heard him talk, and Vorey, who saw pictures or something, said that whatever it was that Mr. Graham had was too big to be Gef the Mongoose. Vorey Irving gave only one interview as an adult, in which she said, quote, Jeff was very detrimental to my life. We were snubbed. The other children used to call me the spook. I had to leave the Isle of Man, and I hope that no one where I work now ever knows the story. She went on, saying that she blamed Jeff for her never having married, saying, quote, how could I ever tell a man's family about what happened? Her very last words on the subject were, I wish he had let us alone. And Vorey Irving passed away in 2005. So there we go. That is the story of Jeff. Now, there are, of course, a bunch of conclusions about what Jeff was, what he could have been. The prevailing theory is, of course, that he was a hoax. Now, I don't know about you, Jake, but I don't know how you could hoax any of this stuff. I mean, maybe some of it. You can make up a story.
Yeah.
But like, if you go back to Captain Dennis's like description of what he witnessed in the house and the sounds coming from just everywhere, that's not something a ventriloquist can do. And I'm a huge Jeff Dunham fan. I love ventriloquists. But that just doesn't strike me as something that you could do. You know, and if you got somebody in your house with you, like setting up like a wire so that you can make something fly across the room or something, that just doesn't seem like it's plausible to me. There's also the fact that, like, if you're going to hoax something like this, there's got to be a reason. And usually that reason is money. However, even Harry Price noted that money wasn't it. He witnessed Jim refusing to sell any photos of Jeff. Like, people were offering him money for photos of Jeff that he apparently already had. And some of which I've found and I will share in the Facebook group. So if you want to see what Jeff allegedly looked like, get in there and I'll share some pictures in there. But Jim wouldn't sell them. He also turned down an offer of $50,000, which was a shitload of money in 1931.
Yeah.
And the offer was from a theatrical agent who wanted the rights to Jeff and Jeff's story. So obviously it wasn't, even though, you know, Jim was a fairly not well-to-do man, he wasn't wanting to make money off of this. And they also weren't looking for fame. Jim turned away more people and more reporters and more whatever, you know, even Price, like, witnessed himself, that he said himself, he knew 2 men who wanted to visit, and Jim just outright refused. Like, he just refused. Now, there's like one other like reason for the hoax theory, and that is simply put, boredom. And when it comes to this one, they don't even know. Most people will disagree even on who to blame for it being a hoax. But they say boredom because the Isle of Man is not exactly an island paradise. It's flat and wide. There's mountains there, but it's like, it's all grassy. There's not even a lot of trees. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, there's only trees in like sheltered areas and shit. And it's just like wheat fields and sheeps, apparently. At least it was back then. Now they have a motorcycle race that is like worldwide famous. I want to check it out, like see what it's like. But it's supposed to be real dangerous and real gnarly motorcycle race. But it wasn't back then. So they say boredom. You know, I've been pretty damn bored in my life, and I never thought to try and invent a talking mongoose that had telekinetic prop, you know? So the other prevailing theory is that Jeff was indeed not a talking mongoose or a hoax, but that he was a poltergeist. What do you think about that one, Jacob?
The fact that he moves stuff around and you could hear it talk, that would make some sense, but I've never heard of a poltergeist help people.
That's facts. Most of the time, poltergeists are just like throwing shit, and yeah, there are some reports of you can hear them screaming or talking or what have you. But they throw shit, they move shit, they're mischievous. At the best, they're mischievous.
Yeah.
I've never heard of a poltergeist trying to help you clean up your bedroom or fold your undies or something like that. Now, that being said, there is a lot of other things that do fit a poltergeist, like the fact that there was an adolescent in the house, which is a big theory on poltergeist. Most poltergeist type activity, there is an adolescent, usually a female, in the house. The fact that Jeff really like would just throw fits like an adolescent does, you know, things like that. However, not everybody agrees that it might have been Vori. Some people think that it might have been Jim. who was causing the poltergeist type activity. And it was like an expression of his overprotectiveness of Vori. Which, look, I'm a real protective dad. I've never made shit move with my mind or made the walls cuss and fucking like bite my wife. I don't know. Like, so I kind of don't think that's it. And my other against the poltergeist theory, I'm not sure if I said this one yet or not. No, I've never seen pictures of poltergeists.
Yeah.
And nobody describes them physically. In this case, we have physical descriptions and alleged photos. So that kind of throws a poltergeist thing out the window. He would, like, apparently Gef was physical in some ways. So he wasn't a poltergeist. Maybe he was a poltergoosed. I don't. Now, there is one more theory, which, Jake, you and I talked about this theory yesterday, and both of us kind of scratched our head. But I've thought about this, and I think I might have a way to explain this. So there was another researcher that came to visit the family, and his name was Nando Fodor, I think is how you say it, that's just a hell of a name. And originally, he believed that Gef was a real talking animal. So this guy's theory was that somehow Gef was a very long-lived mongoose that could talk and had telekinetic powers. Now, he too never actually saw Gef, but he talked to a bunch of witnesses, and that's what made him believe. So like I said, other people did experience Gef shit. It wasn't just the Irvings. But he did believe that Gef was very earthly because he ate, he drank, he slept, he caught rabbits, he helped the family, all of those things. So his original theory was that Gef really just was some sort of extra clever little mongoose. However, in 1952, he changed his mind. And he started to believe that Gef was both a talking animal and a split off part of Jim's unconscious mind. Now, yesterday we talked about this and neither one of us could figure out exactly how that works. But I put a little more thought into it. Do you know what a tulpa is?
No.
Okay. So a tulpa is like it comes from Buddhism. And in short, what it is a being that is willed into existence. So the Buddhists believe if you get either one person with a strong enough will or a group of people to think of something and believe in it hard enough that it will actually become a real thing. Think Slender Man. That's the Slender Man theory. Started out as an internet thing. Then we all know where he started. But people think that people have put so much attention and time into it that it actually became real. So I think this is just my interpretation of what Nando Fodor is saying, is that Jim somehow created a tulpa. And he believes that this happened because, like I said, Jim's earlier life, he had been a fairly successful salesman and merchant. But when he retired to this boring ass little island in this tiny little farm, he began to not succeed at it. And Nandor believed that Jim saw himself as a failure, which is really a dick thing to say about somebody. Like, oh, no, I believe you're a fucking failure. Fuck you, Nandor. That's not nice at all. Maybe Jim fucking enjoyed his farm, you fucking asshole. I don't like judgmental people, all right? But he believed that Jim, this was a way for Jim to unconsciously just kind of express the passion and adventurous spirit that he'd had in his previous life. And so he accidentally created a real talking telekinetic critter with his unconscious mind.
That boy.
Those are the prevailing theories. What do you think, Jacob?
I think he was a clever little poltergoosed.
I kind of have to agree with you. I think Gef was something entirely all his own.
Yeah.
I don't honestly believe it was a hoax. It's just there were too many witnesses that saw too many things and described it in ways that I don't see how you could hoax. I feel like you could hoax maybe a few of these things. You know, ventriloquism is a thing. It's not an easy thing. It's a thing. So yeah, maybe you could make it sound like the wall was talking. But can you make it sound like the wall is talking on the left side of the room, then the right side of the room, then in the ceiling, and then throw something upstairs too? I kind of don't think so. I just kind of don't think so. And as far as it being a traditional poltergeist, yeah, it clicks some of the buttons, but not all the buttons. And I think Nandor's theory of it being a tulpa is just some bullshit. It just doesn't add up to me. So yeah, I think that Gef was something entirely his own. And what that is, we will probably never know. But it sure is hell fun to think about. So that having been said, Jake, you got anything else to add to that part of this?
No, that was
Beautiful.
the hell of a story.
All right. So listeners, now it's your turn. Let us know what you think. And the easiest way to do that is to look us up on Facebook, the Paranatural Podcast group on Facebook, which leads us into all of the people that have joined us in the last week. So, Jacob, whenever you're ready, let's give a shout out to our supporters.
All right. I'm going to do this one first just so she don't kill me. Leilani English. Perfect pronunciation.
You did well. My girlfriend will be very happy with you, and you're not going to get a dick sweater.
All right, good. I still want the dick sweater, though. Crystal Thornsberry, Jake Sowers, Amanda Sowers, Yvonne Goldlock, Jason Jeffcoat. Thank you again.
Yeah, you got a two for buddy because we got such a damn list. You're on there for free this time.
Luann Stout. You, of course.
Woohoo!
Ryan Rose, Austin Sheetenhelm, Brenda Sheetenhelm, Justin Chirac, Sam Kelly, Michael Sherlock, Emmy Louise Worm, Ricky Brainerd III, Rayanne Sheldon, and my favorite one to say, because we've all heard of him before, Gage Arndt. He's the buddy that was with me when I witnessed the dog man. May or may not have, but he's the one who ran away like a pussy. Love him.
Gage, just for the record, if you're listening, I do not blame you for running away when all the two of you morons had was a BB gun and a pocket knife. Oh, and a flashlight. And a flashlight. So I don't blame you. He might.
I certainly do.
Of course, I wasn't the one that was going to get eaten by the dog man. So I'm not going to blame you.
I caught up hella fast.
Fucking Shaggy over here. But anyway, we really do appreciate all the love and support. And thank you guys for joining the group. And thank you for listening.
And thank you to the people who continue to listen to all of our stuff. Where did you say that one was from?
There is someone, and if you are listening to this one, which I assume you are, in Cambridgeshire, which is apparently in the UK. Buddy, get it in the Facebook group. We want to have listeners and friends from England. Please get in the Facebook group.
We got England, Canada, and US, baby.
You have listened to every one of our episodes. We would like to know who you are. Please let us know. Reach out to us. We might need your help at some point. The UK is full of freaking cool ass spooky stories. So please, bud, get in the Facebook group. And thanks for listening. Thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoy our show, rate and review anywhere you can. It really helps. And tell your friends, tell your family, have them listen to us, share these episodes with them. It will help us grow, help us reach more ears. We really love doing this. We really hope people enjoy this. And we want to reach as many people as we can. So thank you all for those who do listen. And please tell your friends.
Love you guys so much.
We really do. Anything else, Jacob?
Nope.
All right, then. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode and any others. Please don't forget to tell your friends. But good night for now.
Have a spooky night.